understands tonight's meeting is a special meeting. It's called for the purpose of completing the unfinished agenda from July 6th. The items remaining on the agenda are 6.1 in ordinance 2021-012, 7.1, an update on our water reading system, and 10.1, which was a resolution regarding the developers agreement, the TID agreement with pin seekers. Those are the only items that we're going to be addressing tonight. We also are asking that if you have registered to appear and you already appeared on July 6th, that it be with new information or relevant information to one of those three topics. You'll note that the items are on your agenda, but you'll also note that one is on setting agendas, one is on the water meter, and one is on the TID agreement. I also want to talk a little bit about when you appear, what is anticipated. We want our appearances to be respectful. We want people to not make any derogatory comments about staff or board members. It's important that we have civil discourse. We're not going to want side chats going on. If you do have a side conversation, we'll ask that people take it outside. We also ask that you keep your remarks to 3 minutes or less. If someone before you has already made the comments that you want to make or has stated the information you want to state, please just indicate that you agree with that and you don't have to take the time to redo it. We're also asking that you take the time to think about what you're saying and that it be relevant information and data and facts about the item and not be just a barrage of derogatory remarks against the board. There's some board members who have been insulted over the last few weeks, and we don't need to have that happen. So with that, we're going to begin with our presentations and our appearances. And I will begin by asking for Travis Blair to come forward. We did that. We did roll call.
We did roll call.
Okay, thank you. Also, if you're on Zoom, we ask that you mute yourself until you're called on to speak. Is Travis Blair either on the Zoom or in the room? If not, we'll move on. You can come back. Is Kathy Bergeron? Or don't see her.
Should we? Hey, everybody. Hope you're doing well.
Christy, can you state your name and address for the record?
Of course, yes. Christy Bergeron. I'm at 6913 Larkspur Lane in DeForest.
Christy, you'll need to move the mic close to your mouth. Thank you.
How's that? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Awesome. All right. Like I said, I'm Christy Bergeron and I live in Conservancy Place in Rivers Turn. My husband, son, and I moved to Conservancy Place in 2017. We love the nature trails and river, of course, but we've always known about the office space and businesses eventually coming in on the west end. I mean, there are signs there. And have hoped they would be a great addition to the area and would supplement the neighborhood well without being in dissonance with it, just how Conservancy Place is advertised. In recent weeks, we've seen a Village of DeForest staff vision mock-up for this area with what is labeled an entertainment complex with driving range, which we assume to be pin seekers, in addition to an ice arena, hotel, and other tourism-focused elements. The proposed pin seekers facility with massively tall poles and nets that will loom over the neighborhood is not complementary to the area and will be disruptive to the residents of the homes, condos, retirement home, and new apartments. With a 250 car parking lot, pin seekers will contribute to increased neighborhood traffic and ostensibly convert Conservancy Place into a tourist area, along with the planned hotel, the existing sports complex, and so on. Here is some language currently on the Conservancy Place website homepage, and I quote, "Walk along a wooded trail, the sun falling softly through the oak canopy overhead, and you will find the river. Keep going, and you will also find your business, your company, your community, your home. This is Conservancy Place, where neighborhood, commerce, and community can come together exactly the way they should, in a place of authentic and inspiring natural beauty." Do you hear the words entertainment or tourism in there? No. My business or my company is not something like Pin Seekers, which is an entertainment venue designed mostly to attract patrons from outside the neighborhood. I'm an IT supervisor. My neighbor is an airplane mechanic. Another neighbor is a CIO. As trustees, it's important to know who the people in your community are and to represent them. If this starts going up over backyards, people are going to ask how it got approved because it's not what they were sold when they moved there. And they're going to find out how it got approved. I'm confused about how the village and Parktown are able to get away with continuing to use this marketing to entice people to this neighborhood while turning it into something else. Are we residents just naive to something weird that's going on here? Because it kind of feels like it. And before you brand me a snob who doesn't want anything in my neighborhood, I just want to tell you, I grew up a dairy farm kid. My husband served 2 tours in the Middle East. We don't complain about much and we don't ask for much, but we feel like this is kind of ridiculous. The ethical thing to do here would be to vote no to this and then work with residents to shift from this tourism staff vision plan to a community and staff vision plan for the area. And I'd just like to say, you could reach out to people like me in the neighborhood and we'd gladly help with it. Thank you.
Question?
I don't think we're doing questions tonight. We're going to get through and let people speak.
Oh, this is a different question. That's never been asked before. It'd be quick.
We're just not doing the Q&A thing. We're going to let people speak. And then if we have questions at the end, we'll talk about them. Thank you.
Thanks, Rissy.
Thank you very much, everyone.
All right, John Strangfeld. John? I'm not seeing him in the room. Is he online? I think you just went by his name. I saw Leslie Strangfeld, I think. Maybe not.
Leslie Strangfield.
I don't know if that's the same.
This is Leslie. John and I did not want to voice our concerns publicly tonight.
Okay. Thank you, Leslie. All right, Sarah Zook.
Hello. This is also very much a first for me. I needed to come today. I didn't think I would sleep tonight if I did not.
Can you share your
Sure.
name and
Sarah
address?
Zook, 7705 Autumn Blaze Trail. We also are in Rivers Turn and Conservancy. I've been a part of this community since 2003. I've never actually felt the inclination to come to a board meeting in this sense before. So I guess that says a lot right there. I won't speak for the obvious reasons why I don't support our location for the contract of pin seekers. I think those before me have covered this in entirety. But I will speak first that I don't support this agenda tonight that actually physically states that we will be giving pin seekers for this development almost $1 million. I thought working in healthcare over this past year of a pandemic made me learn every new thing possible. But I've taken it upon myself to learn about TIF funding. I think TIF funding was harder to learn than a pandemic, but I tried. So I'm maybe not as polished as everyone in the room is talking about this tonight, but I'll do my best. TIF funding doesn't feel designed for this venture. This area isn't necessarily underserved or rural. We're not, this business that is asking for this is not a new business that's simply starting out. They've built these venues all over the country, mostly by Costco's, not in conservancies. I don't wish to have this money spent this way, at least not without my actual valid input and vote on this topic. My career is to find ways to help people be healthy, afford medicine, have access to food. TIF has a purpose, but not for an entertainment venue of this magnitude at our expense. This development whole contract, I also don't support what's come out of the infrastructure related to this. I've read all 118 pages from Monday night. I've spent a lot of time to try to have meaningful conversations with those on the board and feel informed. I feel like most of these are very siloed. You can look at a traffic study just looking at pin seekers, but how does that include what you have also already improved? They're very siloed analysis, and I think that's really putting us in a dangerous spot. A couple things to add, to begin this, Ms. Wolfgram, you said to stick to facts, and I do see that. I'm a science person myself. But I feel like some of the facts are also have been construed very positive, very, again, one-sided. There are even some opinions shared in your own documents. Some of the quotes from our village planning consultant, he says, concerns with, for example, a Topgolf facility in another municipality do not appear relevant to me. I don't know if that's a fact. Another quote, to suggest that the proposal is at the edge of any existing or planned residential neighborhood is, in my opinion, a reach. Those are not facts. Those are also opinions. In my job, for what I do, I don't get to present a new medication or drug to my hospital or clinic pharmacy to be put on a formulary based on opinions or just pros, making things seem great. I have to include some cons. I don't feel like our cons or our word has been pulled into these conversations much. I think it has to go both ways, and I think both are valid. You can really make something look very pretty when you don't pull in any of the cons. A lot of our cons are factual, some are emotional. I know that has come to be, but not all of them. This tone and kind of divisiveness that has been set from this, I just don't feel like will simply go away. I'm really hoping as a board, you look to support more than just a developer. I'm really hoping you support and just hear us as a community. I'm here for my neighborhood and my community. I'm not here to put down any decisions that this board makes. I feel like any opposition that has come from this contract with this developer, it could have been a moment for you to embrace this opposition, to hear questions, or the answers have not always been transparent. It might have been an opportunity for you as a board to come out even more of a leader. And at this point, I just personally feel like I need to be here even more moving forward, despite whether I have time to do so or not.
Thank you. We're at 3 minutes. Colin Crowley. We're all going to be held to 3 minutes tonight, or we'll never get through our business again. You know, we didn't have to put appearances on this agenda at all. We did because we were asked by two trustees to do that, but we need to get through our business tonight. So we're going to hold to our times pretty strictly. Colin.
Not online that I see, so.
Okay, and he's not in here. Brian Goodman.
Before I get started, Dave Daniel, I can be here tonight, and I've seen members can donate their time. So if you want in his 3 minutes. All right. Brian Goodman, 7804 Blue Stem Trail. Before I get started, I'll let you know that I'm here as a civilian of DeForest with no professional affiliation or any kind of attachment to my profession whatsoever. It's no secret that I'm opposed to pin seekers and the proposed location. Given the caveat at the beginning of this meeting, what do we talk about new, right? We have presented so much information, factual data, and it feels like there's a lot of padded stats that we are presented in return. I've voiced that it's the last voice that is the loudest and has the most grip on this board, and I hope that you guys reconsider that. So what's going to happen further? What have we not talked about so far? Michelle presented last week on Monday as well about several different options and topics I'd like to discuss. I did send some pictures in, and I'd like, if we can, pull those up for reference. The first one I'd like to talk about is the Overland, Kansas Topgolf, which is used as a reference for, hey, look, there's other residents that are near Topgolfs. So I went on Google Maps earlier and looked at the next nearest ones. Yes. You can pull up any of them that have a actual location on there. So down. So Auburn Hills, Michigan, Cincinnati, Ohio. I've also got St. Louis, Indianapolis, Naperville, Schaumburg. All of these are a simple Google search away. And when taking a measuring tool to them, I request that my time get paused until we're able to pull these photos up. Oh, you're okay. That's totally fine. I'm sure you were bombarded with photos today. Thank you. So, and there's no particular order to these, but I wanted you guys to see these as a reference point that Overland, Kansas does not speak for all Topgolfs. Even though Overland, Kansas has residents that are within a quarter mile, if you look at these, the ones that I'm showing, the closest residential neighborhood is not even within 0.8 miles. So within 0.8 miles. Of those residences that are within 0.8 miles or at that 0.8 mile mark, they're not a neighborhood. That is not a neighborhood whatsoever. So look what they're near. Right there, we're looking at Twin Peaks, the Mellow Mushroom, restaurants, convenience stores. We're looking at Costco's, Whole Foods. We're looking at Walmart's, not Conservancy Place. I want to make sure that I get through all of this because this is very important stuff. The next thing that I would like to pull up, and this is a very important photo for you all to see. Can you please pull up the photo that is labeled eye view and then cell phone? So human eye perception should be last, but cell phone, one more down. Nope, go back up. Right there, cell phone perception. Okay. So this photo right here was taken from a resident that didn't feel comfortable enough to speak tonight, but wanted to make sure that you all understand that the photos that were taken around our neighborhood at those different starred locations were done with a cell phone. So if you look at this, this is exactly 0.5 miles away from where the proposed location is. And if you pull up the next photo, that's human eye perception, what he did was he changed the lens so that it reflects more of what the human eye is actually going to be able to see. That is the same location, same photo taken with how the human eye will see it. It's a very different look. So when we are presented later, I don't know if that same presentation is going to be given today, but when that presentation is given, that is with a cell phone, not what the human eye sees. It's very different. And I hope that you guys understand that. On Monday at the planning and zoning meeting, Jim, I believe you used Google Street View. Again, very different than what the human eye is going to see. So when you're looking at that tower as a reference point, there's a lot of different things that were happening in that meeting that were considered that shouldn't have been, or that were not considered that should have been. And I have the whole list right here that I think you guys should definitely hear if questions get opened up. The next thing is speaking with Tinder Reflections. She'll talk about how Tinder Reflections is excited, the management's excited, the residents there are excited. Did you all know that Tinder Reflections, if you go on Google, has a 1-star review? 1 star. I'm going to quote several people here. These are all a 1-star review. I listed everyone that has a comment on the reviews. Quote, I've never seen a facility with mold and residents living in rooms like that. Management knowing and doing nothing. Quote, worst place I've ever worked at. They actually took money from me. Quote, outside looks terrible. Certainly isn't welcoming to new residents. Quote, run by people who mostly care about money, not their staff, their residents, or the care they provide. Quote, poorly managed.
Ryan, how is that relevant to what's going on?
I will finish and wrap this up. I will tell you exactly how it's relevant. Management and owners are heartless. I feel terrible for the residents. So when we talk to Tinder Reflections and they say, we are excited, our residents are excited, how can you take that as gospel when the residents are living in these conditions and guess what? Nobody knows about it. This is very relevant because you're taking a viewpoint from management that could care less about their residents and you're putting Topgolf or pin seekers right across from them. Management's going to be extremely excited about them. They're more concerned about the money, not the residents. That's why I bring this up.
Thank you.
Okay.
Your time is up, Brian.
A lot of that time was paused looking for
I
photos.
wrote it at 6:19. It's
I request to
6:24.
continue with factual data, please.
Wrap it up in 1 minute.
Okay, in 1 minute. I've talked about noise, I've talked about lights in nauseam. I know more about decibels than I ever wanted to. Expanding on some background knowledge and I can expand even further. However, there's some things that are very concerning that people do not feel comfortable coming up here and talking about. Of these, we talked about Bill Ranget and his history of discrimination. Nobody wants to talk about that because it's not on the LLC. It was conveniently removed from the LLC, and Ryan even provides that he will be integral in the construction in the process of pin seekers. Is that what DeForest wants to be known for? We also have residents inside of Conservancy Place that within 1 day, we were able to find 2 residents, whether it's the owners or kids that have special needs in there and how this affects them. Remember that I've brought up Thornton, Colorado and how Topgolf moved because of the issues with special needs and how they would the residents would have to move as a result of the lights and noise. Think about that. These are very important topics. Has anybody gone out to see how many people would be affected on that side of the house?
Thank
as a
you.
result of this.
We appreciate your remarks. Laura Morrison.
Can you hear me? Hello?
We can hear you.
Okay. Hi, my name is Laura Morrison and I live at 4636 Mistflower Court in Conservancy. Thank you for listening to me tonight. I sat through the meeting on Monday night and listened to all the arguments and discussion, and I just felt like there were a couple things that people maybe were missing that I really wanted to bring forward. The first thing is all the discussion about the traffic. I want to be clear that my concern, outside of the fact that we're concerned about River Road not being ready to handle the traffic, and the alternate routes there being CV or River Road from 19 aren't great options either. My main concern is the cut through traffic that I know is going to happen from the east side on Innovation. Anybody who lives in DeForest and goes to Costco or Target or the theater in Sun Prairie, if you've ever taken Portage Road and cut through the subdivisions to avoid the roundabouts and the lights and the traffic, I do it too. And every time I go through there, I think about those poor residents that they have all this traffic coming through. That is going to happen as soon as people figure out it's faster to go that way, or they can avoid the construction. They're going to start cutting through. And as probably many of you know, there is already a little bit of an issue where the trail crosses the new Innovation piece as it goes through to CV. With parking there, you really have to slow down. And I'm concerned because I've seen people almost get hit a few times there, even after the light. And I'm worried that people coming from other areas aren't going to be mindful of that. And I just want to make sure that if you haven't thought about that piece of the traffic, think about it, because not only is that road going to need more repair, but it is going to become very dangerous, more dangerous than it already is, which leads to my second concern. Take that, that's just from pin seekers. And I'd like to go on the record saying, I love golf. I'm not opposed to pin seekers in general. I'm just not sure that this particular site is the best place for it. If you add what all the things you're talking about, we've been splitting hairs about whether we're a quarter mile or a half mile, how far the decibels go. To me, it's all noise, because the bottom line is that is just the impacts that we're going to see from this. But you guys know, and so do I, this is the first domino to fall. And I'm asking you to be very considerate of what you put there, because more is going to come. We know that. We've seen the plan, and I don't think anyone is unreasonable in the subdivision to say we want absolutely no development. We know that's not possible. I'm just suggesting Conservancy Place and the homes along River Road are going to bear the brunt of it. And this is just one. And then when you add the next, and you compound the light and the sound and the traffic and more calls for service for emergency vehicles in that area, that is a huge impact, and it is coming. So I'm just asking you to please, pin seekers may fit what you have in mind for that use, but I know that there are also other uses that could come that might be beneficial to the local economy and have less of a negative footprint for our area. Do we need to have a regional destination right outside of a neighborhood where we're talking about conservancy? Those are my thoughts, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Laura. And did you get Laura's address and name for the record?
List of
Thank-
appearances. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. Anne Marie Priest.
Hi, I'm Anne Marie Priest, 4599 Sunburst Drive in Conservancy Place. I was on the planning and zoning meeting on Monday on Zoom, and I want to talk about a couple of things that I thought were false equivalencies that were expressed at that meeting. The first one was that hearing an occasional football game is in any way comparable to live outdoor alcohol-fueled music that could last till 11 o'clock or later every day of the week. I don't think those things are at all alike. The other thing that I think was a bad equivalency is to compare VI-10s with pin seekers. Number one, like if you've managed a mini golf course like VI-10s, does that really mean that you can handle a multi-million-dollar golf and entertainment place? The skill sets aren't exactly the same. I used to live near VI-10's golf course. I took my little girl there, and it is not at all like pin seekers. And to say that Vitens hasn't had any problem harming any birds or hasn't had a big problem harming birds, they're not at all alike. It's one story. The nets are short. It is not in a wetlands and a nature conservancy area. It's at the conjunction of two big freeways, and it has freeway exits in and out. Oops, God. So, I mean, the same thing can't be said for pin seekers. I was on the phone with Wisconsin Wetlands. They said that they were very concerned because there is a wetland behind the houses in Rivers Turn. And the concern would be like, what is the runoff going to be from the parking lot? Is that going to have any effect on the wetlands? The problem with the nets, or if, you know, as Ryan said, maybe it's going to be metal mesh, there's still going to be bird strikes at 165 feet of net. The lights are a problem for birds. The lights are a problem because number one, it's going to attract bugs, that's going to attract birds, and the birds are going to attract hawks. When birds, the twice annual migration of birds they use like old sailors, they use the constellations and the bright lights, especially the marquee lights, are going to distract them from migration, and we're going to have a lot of bird strikes. Our little side streets taking people after that concert. I mean, we're going to have people that strike deer. The birds are having a problem anyways because of the loss of habitat, because of climate change, and the recent weakening of the the Endangered Species Act and the Migratory Bird Act. They're already under a big threat, and this is going to make it worse. The other thing is that the idea that just because you managed a mini golf, you can handle building and managing this multi-million-dollar thing is crazy. I don't know how we're going to be able to release birds if they're trapped in nets, or if birds are going to be hit with strikes. I think that's all a problem. And we need to protect our environment. This is why people came to Conservancy Place, because they want to live among nature. They don't want bar music blasted in their ear till 11 o'clock.
Thank you, Ann.
Okay.
Nick Street.
Hello, Jane, could you please give me a 1 minute and a 30-minute warning so I don't run over?
Sure.
Thank you. I'm Nicholas Strite, 4624 Miss Flower Court. I'm grateful for this opportunity. I've actually corresponded with quite a few of you, and it's nice to get to know people in person. And I appreciate all your responses to the emails that I've sent. So when I or anyone talks about the decibel levels, light spill, et cetera, I know it gets dry and people's eyes start to glaze over after a while. But the reason we keep repeating this is because we don't think you're hearing us the first time. I will not talk about that anymore. Pin seekers is a luxury. It's not a necessity. It's not a greater good. It's not a school. It's not a hospital. It's not a daycare. It's a fun place for people to go spend their money. The presence of pin seekers in our neighborhood is going to change it forever, and not in a good way for many of the residents. The concerns that we have about the light, the noise, and the visual change is very real. So I know when you're making your vote, you have to look at the entire village of DeForest, but I would say that the people who live in the neighborhood, their opinion does matter, and overwhelmingly Conservancy Place is opposed to this. We will have to deal with the noise, the traffic, the light issues, the loss of visual appeal, and everybody can downplay that, but it's 160-foot tall towers with a large net, music, noise. We'll have to look at that. And in my mind, this is the very thing that we have you here, is to prevent these kind of things from happening to us. I know that some of you have served for a long time, and I think a few others are more recent. From talking to people and from my experience, this is this kind of a outpouring from the citizens is pretty unusual. A lot of people representing their opposition. Thank you. So the majority of people who have sent in forms oppose this. There are some people who don't. A lot of them are from the outside of the Madison area. A petition was done at a shopping mall When you do a petition or a poll, it's all about context. How do you ask the question? Do you want a golf venue? Yeah, sounds great. They don't know the details. So if you vote yes for this project, who is represented? The Rangettes for certain, Mr. Roffers, planning and zoning. Some people in the forest might actually like the venue, but we don't have it yet. We have golf in Windsor. We have bars, we have restaurants. This is not a need. If you vote no for this project, who are you representing? The people sitting behind me, many of them, all the people who sent in objection forms, people who called you, emailed you, people who provided hours and hours of research trying to show you that this is not in the best interest of our village.
Thank you, Nick.
The question you have to ask yourself is, who do you represent?
Okay, we have just a couple more. Eric Larson.
You hear it okay? Okay. Eric John Larson, 7701 Autumn Blaze Trail. So I'm going to throw a third of this out. I'm just going to start. Strong people stand up for themselves, but stronger people stand up for others. I believe this for some time, but sorry I do not see it in the room with this board. Two of you, only two of you, I've talked about this project. Both people I do not share political ideals with at all. Not at all. Total opposites. But they listen to me. The rest seem to have done little to nothing. I've heard the names, sometimes we're called because we live in the nice part of town. It hurts because I spent a lot of time making my money. I put it away. I didn't spend it on big vacations or several cars or anything like that. I saved for 35 years to build my house. I'm living off my retirement now during the pandemic. I'm not exceedingly wealthy. I just manage my money well. The word innovation means nothing now. It has nothing to do with what is envisioned. Perhaps Greedy Road or Tax Hike Lane are better served names for this project. And I want to talk to only two people that matter, Abby and Tashidra. I'm looking at you, and I want to examine the reasons why we are begging you to help us. You're a teacher, correct? You've been in the village board for 4 years, correct? Okay. We don't have any representation from where we live. Nobody from Conservancy is on this board. The fact is, though, this has gone through very quickly. You both know that. And I know you're both a little skittish about this. There is no reason to be afraid of this board, the trustees, or the investors. You have the perfect right to help us. And what I'm going to ask you to do tonight is simple, to vote to delay this. There's too many unanswered questions. And I invite both of you to come to my house, the way Bill has to look at the land. I should have my picture up right now and it's not up. Yes, and to see what I'm talking about, because I think you will see it. And come over for coffee. I have a really nice big coffee maker. It's all nice. So you can sit and have coffee. The fact is, we need you because I think you know something isn't right. But we need you to stand up for us. That is your job. And I ask you to please do it because without you, I don't think this town is going to get along much longer. This little town cannot afford to be like the United States. I can put my political things aside with other people, but we're being ripped apart over this. And that isn't even shouldn't be normal for this.
Thank you, Eric.
I just want to say one thing. This is the Photoshop I put together from my front porch. It's an estimation of size, what this thing is going to look like. That's just an estimation. I can say this real quick. Standing up for your beliefs seems difficult. When you stand with others, there's a strength. This next spring, there will be elections and bad decisions will be remembered by the voters, especially in our neighborhood. Remember this well. Elections have consequences.
Joe Grenchick.
I am Joe Grenchick, 116 East Elm Street. I'm a little disappointed with some of the comments that were made about our ability to address the board. This is our avenue to address you. And it's very disheartening and it's very upsetting when we're told what we can and can't talk about. If there's things going on in the village that we hear of, this is kind of our avenue to do that. So it's unfortunate that we're being constricted by the board now of what we can talk about and say. And I'll just also provide my opposition to the golf development. I think that this is not something that belongs in DeForest, and I think many of the others have already spoken very well on that subject. So thank you.
All right. Gary Muslingo. He does not want to appear, I'm sorry. And then Ryan Rangat. Do you want to wait till the end, Ryan? All right. It's up to him if he wants to go now or later. All right, Nancy Nader.
My name is Nancy Nader. I live at 7730 Indigo Drive in DeForest. And I'm here just representing myself as a resident, a taxpayer, and a homeowner. First of all, I concur with all of the previously mentioned concerns about the lights, noise, and the traffic with the pin seekers project, and I am opposed to it. 7 years ago, we decided to move to Madison from Green Bay. Our children were here, and when we retired, we wanted to be closer to them. So we spent months researching where we wanted to live in the Madison area. We looked at Middleton and Dane, Cross Plains, Madison, Sun Prairie, and Wanakee. And we were thrilled when we came across a Rivers Turn and Conservancy Place in DeForest. We looked at the area, went through with realtors, and loved the trails, the pond, and the wildlife. It was rural, quiet, but it was also close enough in town to be able to go to the Pick and Save, the Walgreens, or the library. But then 30 to 40 minutes on either side to the left, you could go to Madison or go to the Dells if you wanted more restaurants or entertainment. So we did buy a lot, and we built 6 years ago. And our time here has been wonderful. We've had good neighbors. We're in a tranquil setting. It was everything that we hoped for. People are now saying that they want to make DeForest a destination. They want to put DeForest on the map. It is already a destination. It is already on the map. It's a safe, quiet, and comfortable village and neighborhood for us to live in. It's a wonderful place to raise a family and to retire. People already want to come here and live. They don't need anything more. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Michelle Blau.
Got to turn it so it's green.
Oh. There we go. Good evening. Michelle Blau, 4631 Sunburst Drive. I'm now a pro at this. I've been here twice in 9 days. And I do want to talk about something new. First off, I just want to ask everybody on the board, have you experienced any other projects with this type of opposition? Have you had this many community members come forward? Okay. All right, I just want to get a feel for where we're at here. The reason I wanted to speak tonight is because I attended the Planning and Zoning meeting on Monday. And Colleen, this is nothing personal, but you had stated that you live near the high school and you really weren't bothered by the lights on the field or all of the commotion. And I think that's great. We need people in the community who want to live in those areas by high schools, who thrive on that. And several communities are made of that. But Conservancy Place is not. People who chose to live in Conservancy Place chose a different type of lifestyle. And what really concerned me was at the P and Z meeting, you said, it doesn't bother me, let's vote. And the problem is, it's not about you. It's about everybody that you represent in this community. And so I would ask that when you go in to vote, you don't think about what bothers you. You think about all of the voices that you've heard tonight and how it's bothering them. The majority of the people in Conservancy Place moved to this area due to the quiet nature preserve. They wanted to be away from a downtown area. We have bald eagles, deer, lots of birds that are flying around where there's a lot of concerns now about the wildlife implications that have come out. I've known about this project for about 3 weeks now. And during that time, I've seen one Facebook post from one board member about it. Not one of you have gone out to the community. Well, as far as I know, have gone out to the community to try to get a feel for people's opinions on this. And it's really disheartening because when I spoke 9 days ago, I said the perception in the community is that people feel that you're ramming things through and you're not listening to them. And this weekend, I spent time picking up opposition forms from community members. And I can't tell you how many people said, here's my form, but I'm telling you, it's not going to make a difference. They don't listen. So
Thank you.
I'm here to tell you, all of those people are saying that. Please vote for the people, not for yourself.
Thank you. Lisa Street.
Timer here, Jane, sorry. I'd like to quickly thank all of the board members who have responded to my emails and my phone calls. I really appreciate that. I really am glad for having your presence on our board. That said, I'm doing my best to honor the 3 minutes that Jane has requested. I made a decision to buy in Conservancy Place. At the time, my husband and I looked at properties in Sun Prairie, Bristol, Edgerton, Stoughton, Wanakee, and McFarland. We made a decision based on representations that we should have been able to reasonably rely on. We gave up a property in Wanakee based on these recommendations. Allowing this conditional use to go in goes against the comprehensive plan and any vision that was presented for this neighborhood. The definition of material representation, a convincing statement made to a person to induce that person to enter into a contract or to take a decision which he or she would not have done without that persuasion. That's important. We heard from Anne Marie Priest. She had concerns for impact to the environment and wildlife. She asked a fair question whether a study had been done. I'm paraphrasing, but the gist I got from it, Mr. Roffers, and maybe you could confirm, was that there was no environmental study conducted. There's concerns here, right, with wetlands adjacent to this property. There's concern for takings clause for for the space above that location, right? That airspace is considered a taking of sunset, right to light, right to sunset. It goes back to, I believe it's called the Ancient Lights Doctrine, Mr. Reuters. So consider that as well. Now, we've heard from Air Force pilots with physics training on noise and light study. We've heard from physicians, professors, very educated business professionals, and they've all presented evidence here why you should say no. So let me present you now with another definition. Willful negligence. This is deliberate with the intentional disregard for others. Reckless negligence is very similar, meaning wanton negligence and showing the lack of any concern for the injury of others. You have hundreds of confirmed opposition. You have people who've taken time out of their lives to present this information to you. And yet the P&Z meeting, the vote was yes. I find that vote arbitrary and capricious. Colleen, And Jim, I think you both mentioned being close to loud resources, railways, high schools, things of that nature. There is a difference between living or coming to the nuisance versus bringing the nuisance. So I know Attorney Reuters, maybe you could educate our board on the difference of that with regards to nuisance and the difference coming to. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
All right, we have Tim Ackerman.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
My time doesn't count yet. My name is Tim Ackerman. I live at 4625 Mist Flower Court in DeForest. The interesting thing about being a spectator, being able to sit back and watch this, is that you kind of get an overview of things that I don't think the people at the table here get. But I see a common theme over the course of this meeting thus far and past village board meetings, say the last two village board meetings. And that common theme is that you don't seem to realize that we are the residents that live here. I don't know what the biggest mystery to me is. What is your motivation? You're not fiduciaries, apparently, if you know what that means. Who do you think you are acting on the behalf of? I mean, I wish each board member would tell me, who do you think you are acting on behalf of? The staff people?
Do you have information about the program? Do you have information about the project, Pin Seekers?
Let me change my subject. If you want our respect, you give us your respect. You're not a corporation. You can't tell me what to say.
Oh, but we have to stay to the agenda, Tim.
Yeah, this back and forth, you know, I mean, I'll say it again. If you want our respect, you show us yours. And thus far, I have not seen that. The way you show us our respect is not just by listening. Every one of you will say, oh, come talk to me, I'll listen. But as some other people have said, that doesn't do any good. You'll listen all day and still do what you want. So I want to know what motivates you. Who do you think you are a trustee for?
Thank you.
Because it doesn't appear to be us, the residents.
Thank you, Tim.
And so hopefully you'll answer that for me.
Ryan. What?
All right, good evening.
Just a minute. Yeah, we're not doing that. We're gonna keep moving. All right, Ryan, and if you can keep your remarks short tonight, that would be helpful.
Sure, absolutely. I just wanted to comment on a few things that were mentioned tonight. One of the people that spoke, talked about Topgolf facilities and some of their locations in relation to housing developments, and some of them not being in relation to housing developments. And just wanted to state that, this type of facility that we're talking about is not necessarily a Topgolf facility, which I've definitely mentioned, but there's multiple other types of golf facilities like this, drive shack, golf suites, probably private golf facilities across the country that use the same technology, that are in housing communities and, surround themselves and kind of working with the community. So even though we're talking about pin seekers and the kind of the concept of Topgolf, that was really just a perceptual idea to let people understand the entertainment side of it. But at the first and foremost, it's really about, you know, growing the game of golf. And that's what my passion has been, as I've mentioned before. And then it was also mentioned a little bit about special needs. And I just wanted to say that, you know, I talked a little bit about this at previous times, but I do currently work with 7 to 10 different types of individuals that work with me right now that do have special needs. And I am a golf instructor as well, and I teach. And I've worked with a couple different people, actually. Worked with a gentleman recently that lost his leg in a motorcycle accident. So we had to work in recreating his golf swing. A gentleman it's actually a kid that came from Colombia that was adopted. He has a short use of his right arm and has trouble using that. He's a left-handed golfer, so having to interact with that. And I just thought that those are kind of important notes that, you know, may be relevant or may not be. One of the persons that spoke was talking about live music. You know, we've talked about live music quite a bit, and they extend to that. And that's really not my intention. As we've talked, it's more of an acoustical vibe in that aspect, and really just geared towards Friday and Saturday nights. And we had also talked about that really being about 7 to 10 p.m., so not any later than that. As far as my expertise in this industry, that would probably be the most insulting thing that was said to me. I've worked at Vitense for the last 8 years and helped build that business to what it is now. And actually, our revenues are projected quite similar to what we are doing at Vitense now. And I would also state that my revenue at my current job is actually more on the driving range than it is in miniature golf. So that's just something that is kind of relevant to me. And we also have talked about wildlife and things that are important to obviously preserve some of the wildlife in the area. And I have directly worked with Topgolf and Pin Seekers to what they've involved noise box. I'll finish it up really fast.
Thank you.
Noise boxes.
Keep the comments down while people are speaking.
Okay. I'll stay with that on my way up here. When I drove past ABS and their sign, Conservancy sign said, live, work, and play. And I just thought that was really interesting. Thank you.
Thanks. I understand Joe Ring is on the Zoom line and would like to speak. Joe, can you unmute yourself and state your name and address for the record?
Are you able to hear me?
You speak a little louder, Joe?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
We can hear you. It's light.
Okay, I'll try to speak much louder then for you. So I'm not yelling. I'm just trying to speak loud enough for you to hear me through this process. So again, I'm Joe Ring, 402 Gammon Place in Madison. On behalf of my brothers and I, who are the owners and developers of Conservancy Place. Directly south of this project, we have 17 acres of commercial land that we would have to sell and develop after this project. All of the sound and the light would be there as well. We are very comfortable that we'll be able to sell that property and that this project, Pin Seekers, will not devalue and the ability to sell that property. We have the houses, we have the lots that are yet to be developed that are the closest to Pin Seekers. We are not sensing that there will be an issue in developing those lots and selling those lots. In last week's meeting, Michelle brought up that the village of Dane is about the same size as Conservancy Place. And within that village, I'm sure there's a bar, a restaurant, there's businesses. All of that can interact together and work together. We believe that Pin Seekers will be a great addition to DeForest, but also to Conservancy Place when it's in place and everyone sees how it works. People talk about how vision has changed. Yes, it has changed some. We did have conditional uses all during this whole time. And this is a conditional use. And it's a conditional use, so this process that's happening right now can take place. People can come and we can talk about and discuss what their point of view is, and the board is there to hear their point of view, Ryan's point of view from pin seekers, and to take all of that in and to make a decision based on this project. The process is there. People are communicating their thoughts. And interestingly, last time I spoke about traffic, continually after I spoke, and again this week, traffic is brought up as an issue. Traffic has been studied on a whole for all of Conservancy Place. It has been done. So there's people saying that the board's not listening. Other people aren't listening, but it feels like it's going both ways. So we're both talking, and you as the board members get to hear everything, take it all in, and make your vote tonight. So I will just close with appreciation to the board for taking this time, listening to both sides, evaluating that information, and making the decision that you believe is right. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Okay, I think that's all of our appearances for tonight. Oh. I'm not sure who told you you could. And who do you want to speak? All right, Sarah, do you have new or different information from what you said before? You know, there's a lot of talk tonight about what we should or should not be doing. We called this special meeting, which is a continuation of a meeting in which you guys spoke for over 2 hours. You spoke several meetings before that, and we've heard that. We've heard your positions. Tonight was called so we could get through our agenda. And we have heard and have assimilated your information. So, you know, the thought that we haven't heard you is just not accurate. We're going to move through this agenda and finish our business tonight.
You can speak. He has every right to speak.
Sarah's not saying she wants to speak. She can speak if she wants to. She's shaking her head. Do you want to speak? And I was asking, does she have different information she wants to share?
Okay, I'm actually quite proud. I came up here. In relation to Mr. King and Ryan, you know, we're definitely a different perspective wholeheartedly. You know, what was the tagline? Live, work, and play. We moved here for that, but our definition of play is obviously quite different. We want to play outside. I want my kids to cross the street and not have to wait for 42 cars to go by and wonder, you know, how they're going to get down River Road. I drive down River Road, and when I see a biker, I'm not one of those people who get annoyed. I encourage that. I like that. And many of these things will change. This building and venue is going to have a ripple effect. I personally, you know, really invite you to hear us in a different way, to support us. Again, you know, Mr. Ring and Ryan can speak to you on a developer level, but that's really not actually why we're here today. You are our village board. We are members of the community. You know, you are our representation. We have nowhere else to go. Hopefully our words mean more than a TIF funding or what your vision is. That vision was addended during a time, you know, last year when I almost feel like my life was under such, was already so busy that I simply didn't have the extra energy to put into looking at that amendment. And this amendment went through. And by me not getting involved, it was almost to say that I agreed with you. I just hope we can really change this moving forward so that our voices are heard and that we're working things out together. Thank you for letting me come back up to speak again.
Thank you. Okay. We're going to move on to item 6, ordinance 2021-012 in
Madam President, there was one more appearance.
who is that?
Abe Degnan.
Abe's not here.
He submitted his appearance form and asked for it to be read.
And that matter has been referred and legal counsel is looking at it and it will not be read in the record tonight. It'll be on
So
an
when
agenda
was it
going forward.
referred? When did we refer it?
Well, I think we received it about 2 o'clock this afternoon.
Okay. So it's just being referred without coming before the board then?
It's not on this agenda. It isn't in reference to anything on this agenda.
I make a motion to adjourn until this issue is resolved. I feel it has relevance to this discussion and decision tonight.
A second.
There's been a motion made in a second to adjourn. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
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 Motion carries. We're not adjourned. I mean, motion fails. I'm sorry. All right. Moving on to 6.1. It's an ordinance 2021-012, an ordinance amending section 1.07 2MA of the DeForest Municipal Code relating to agenda preparation.
Motion to approve.
There's been a motion to approve.
Second.
And a second. Any discussion? Colleen.
I would like to amend that motion to include 3 trustees. So that 6.1, is it? Reads wherever it says 2 trustees, 3 trustees.
All right. There's been a recommendation by Colleen to change from 2 trustees to 3 trustees. Any further discussion on that? Wait, second.
This is Jim. I'll second it for discussion.
Thank you. All right. Is there any Rebecca?
I have a problem with that because that would set up a negative quorum.
I guess I'd ask if Al could, are we following state statutes or anything that?
Three trustees could discuss calling a special meeting or asking for something to be added to the agenda without it being a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Rebecca?
I also see this as just one more thing to make a burden on the board to be able to bring legislation to this board.
Any other comments? Jim? Oh, I'm sorry, Abby.
Well, a question, I guess 2 questions, just so I can understand this better. First question would be, does this apply to the village president or does the village president continue? Well, I know the village president can put things on agenda. I guess I should say, what if it's a trustee and the village president? Do you still need a 3rd person? Or I don't know if that question's for Colleen because she presented it maybe.
Why don't we ask Al?
It's for me. Under the current ordinances, the village president sets the agenda. So if the village president agrees with any trustees, she could do it on her own. So it would not change that part of it.
And then my second question, okay, this one I think is for Colleen. Just wondering, your reasoning for putting it forward. Because I don't quite know how I would decide on it right now, and I hadn't thought of that possibility. So maybe you can help me think about that more.
I think it just presents a more balanced opinion on something. I think it's too easy for one trustee to have a bright idea and another one just to go along with it. Or to two, perhaps to, since it's been used a lot in the last few months, have an agenda that gets, pushed forward. Just this way, there's a third to say, well, yeah, I think it's got merit, or thank you, Bob. So I don't agree. I just think a little balance is all. I don't know what you're talking about, Trustee Witherspoon, with pushing through legislation. Is that what you said?
Yeah, this is how you get legislation on the table.
I'm aware of that. By putting it on an agenda?
Yeah. And as of right now, it takes two people, two board members to co-sponsor legislation to be presented and be put on the agenda. That is the way the ordinance reads.
And I'm
You
suggesting.
require a third trustee. All this does is put it on the agenda so that it can be discussed and then taken action on. That doesn't mean it's going to pass. It doesn't mean it's going to fail.
I understand how that process.
But making it so that it's more burdensome to have a third trustee to be part of that co-sponsorship creates a problem.
Thank you, Rebecca. Colleen?
More burdensome, but I think it's safer.
Safer for who? Safer so that you don't get stuff on there that you don't want?
Can I ask for
Not
a
at all.
point of order?
Yep. We treat one another with respect. Okay, we have Jim.
So for what I wanted to ask Alan or anybody that might know, do we know what, say, is generally done in other communities? Is it 2 or 3, or I guess do we care? But
I certainly can't speak to all communities. There are certainly communities I'm aware of that only allow the village president to set the agenda. Other communities, I believe, have provisions to allow for trustees to ask for it, but I certainly can't give you a summary of what the rules are.
okay, thank you.
Okay. Bill?
Without that, I recommend we stay at 2. I see there's no reason to change it. I'd fully support the original intent of the ordinance to facilitate orderly additions to the agenda. It's very simple form. In fact, it's already been used before this even became will or may not be enacted. To require 3 people is squashing our democratic process, and I'm totally against it.
All right, we're just talking about parliamentary procedure. I wanted to then say we have a motion on changing to 3 on the floor, and it has a second. Is there any further discussion on that? Otherwise, we can call.
Call vote, please.
Roll call vote, all right. So this is regarding 3.
We never had a
Abby?
motion for that. We had the original motion to pass this. Somebody asked for this.
Colleen made a
But
motion.
we never,
and Jim seconded.
what happened to our motion? It never got.
Still there.
It's still there. It's waiting.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I understood what was going on.
I just wanted to ask if, we vote on it and it passes or doesn't pass, either way, are we still able to further discuss or modify as?
The original, yep, yep. Okay, here we go.
Roll call.
Mhm.
Trustee Colleen Little.
We're voting on the motion as amended.
We're voting on the amendment.
Motion to amend, I vote yes.
Trustee Jim Simpson.
Nay.
Trustee Rebecca Witherspoon.
No.
Trustee Tashidra Allen.
I abstain.
Trustee Bill Landgraf.
No.
Trustee Abigail Lowry.
Aye.
Trustee Jane Cahill Wolfgram.
Aye.
We have 3 yeses and 3 nos and 1 abstention.
Motion fails. All right, now we're back to the original motion regarding changing the ordinance and the process. And is there any more discussion on this motion?
Roll call vote again.
I'm sorry, are we ready for the roll call on that one?
Yes.
Apologies. Trustee Jim Simpson.
Aye.
Trustee Rebecca Witherspoon.
Aye.
Trustee Tashidra Allen. Trustee Bill Landgraf.
Aye.
Trustee Abigail Lowry.
I apologize. I was in the middle of a thought. Which motion are we voting on?
To approve the ordinance as written.
Okay. Aye.
Trustee Colleen Little.
Aye.
President Jane Cahill Wolfgram.
Aye.
Motion carries 601.
Thank you. All right, item 7.1, public services update on the water reading system.
I was hoping to have more information. I'll give you a general overview. Census, we use Census as a way to read the meters automatically without having to go on meter read, drive by. That was hit by lightning and it fried the port. So that piece has been shipped off to get fixed, or at least to get a quote on the cost to fix it versus a quote to maybe just upgrade. So let's just say we have version B in right now. We could fix version B or we could upgrade to version C. So we're waiting to get pricing back. I thought we'd have it back. They're behind. The company they had to ship it to is out west in California. They're behind and has not been able to get an estimate on the cost to fix that. So hopefully by the next board meeting, I'll have that information. Since the company we use, Core and Main, has offered us additional resources for us to continue to read meters manually, meaning our guys go out and drive a route and read those so we can get the water bills out every month. But just wanted to give you that update. I thought I'd have more information by now, but we're still waiting.
Okay, thank you. Meanwhile, you're still able to read the meters, right?
Yes, it's manual. It goes back to, not all the way back to how they had to do it one by one, but now they can drive by and they'll pick it up. So.
Great, good.
But unfortunately, we aren't able to offer the service to our residents where we can see if somebody has a leak currently, because with the census meter, we can get those readings every day and we can see if somebody's got 24-hour usage. We can reach out to them proactively and say, hey, you see, you might have a leak or something because you have 24-hour use of water. So for the time being, that the residents are going to be incumbent to be vigilant.
Thank you. Any questions for Judd? Okay, if not, we will continue with item 10.1, which is resolution 2021-067, a resolution authorizing the village president and clerk to execute a development agreement with Pin Seekers LLC for golf and entertainment facility. Michelle, are you first or Mark?
I think I'll go first if that's okay, and then we'll go over to Mark, and I'll be brief. I'm gonna pause just for a second to get my screen sharing going.
And everyone's seen this the last time and in the packet. So I will be brief. Let's see here. Okay. Okay, thank you. I'm going to skip. We've all seen this presentation, so thank you for your patience and thank you everyone that's here to speak tonight. So I'll be brief as well. I will skip the sites, kind of the alternate sites discussion that we've had before. I think that's probably okay to skip. I'll talk about some of the benefits of the current proposed site, the analysis of similar projects in other communities has been brought up tonight, and then why tax increment financing is proposed. I think that's why we're here tonight, is to really discuss the benefits of tax increment financing with this project and why we would even propose it. And so we'll go over that, and then highlights of the development agreement as well. So let's go past these sites here and go to the site at number 4 that was under consideration. As we've discussed, they've been looking at sites Penn Seekers has since 2017 into Forest. So the 4th site under consideration, as you know, is the current one that's in TID 5, and it's got interstate visibility and is conducive to the activities of the DeForest Athletic Complex. The challenge of the area is the interstate access, and so that is why, as we'll go on a little bit further, development in commercial areas has been difficult in that area. So the location in TID 5 will also accelerate development of other commercial businesses in the area, so restaurants, service providers, that sort of thing. And the vision for this area can be seen on the following slide. I want to address this vision that we've talked about, and it was brought up earlier tonight. It was talked about as a staff vision, and that actually was correct at, when we first proposed this to the village board in 2019. We put on there that it was the staff vision because we didn't want people to think it was the developer's vision. So when we presented that to the board, and we got kind of the thumbs up to go forward to sell, for me to do my job in economic development, to kind of sell this type of area, that's what we did. So that's why we changed it to the proposed vision for TID 5. So this area too, I'll mention that we did a presentation on Conservancy Place on August 4th, 2020. And that was in a conversation with another project in Conservancy Place. And so we talked about it then, and wanted to make sure it is really the vision that we have. That is something that we've talked about in terms of having development that's ancillary to the athletic complex. Also the area, the parks and trails that belong to everyone. Also, they belong to visitors. And I think we want to make sure we do want to invite visitors and tourism here. That's in our comprehensive plan. And that is something we want to make sure and continue in economic development. So, we want to make sure we're all on the same page there. So I will stop on that. Then just talking about Conservancy Place, just wanted to highlight again that it is quite large, over 1 square mile. There's certainly a lot of area that's planned for commercial, and you can see there again a snippet from the Conservancy Place website that highlights those commercial areas there. Okay, and this was something Joe Ring brought up too, just to talk about the vastness of Conservancy Place and the comparison to Village of Dane. And he brought it up too, that, there's different amenities in the Village of Dane, and this is quite a large area. So I just wanted to make sure we're all oriented to that. Analysis of similar projects in other communities. So we've talked about this, and it was brought up again tonight. There are some areas that do not have residential, certainly in the United States, that do not, that a Penn Seekers might develop. that does not have residential in the very area. I would point out that this isn't quite a Topgolf, as Brian's brought up before. It's going to be more similar to Vitence. I think that we need to remember that. And also when we're talking about what the effect is going to be in the area. So we want to make sure that's there. I think we could go and find different places in the US. I took Overland Park, Kansas as mine because that was brought up to us before as something that was done. So I'm certainly willing to say that there might be areas in the United States where there's not residential close to a Topgolf, as close as might be. But let's talk about what's important, which is the impact of this development on this area. So I will skip there. I want to talk a little bit about the map we designed. I think the most important thing with this and the pictures that we're going to talk about are really experiencing the area. So I think it's important that we set this up as you'll remember that we wanted to go on kind of a group tour and go and see what the area looked like from these spots, which were the closest places to the development. So I think it's important. I think it was really important for you to go there and see how that is. But in the case you couldn't, I wanted to take pictures that do it. And I think there are all kinds of things you can do with pictures. I think we're all trying to be as forthcoming as we possibly can, me as well as Brian, on what we will be seeing, what residents will be hearing, what residents will be seeing. So let's, this is Tender Reflections. I just want to bring that up a little bit about Tender Reflections. And, you know, I brought that up because that was one of the arguments against is that the folks that lived at Tender Reflections would be adversely affected by this development. So I wanted to call them and actually say, hey, and the executive director is the person that I knew the best person to call. So I wanted to talk to them, and some of you may have heard me say on the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, I did talk to him. He did get several calls from residents. He did not return them. He did not feel that it was something he should do. I don't know why. I certainly didn't advise him not to, but I talked to him on Monday. And he was not upset about the lighting or the noise or anything. And I did see myself that there are residents that go out and watch the construction. That is a fact. So I don't want this to be a referendum on their business. I don't know. I'm not supporting or denying anything of that nature, but I just wanted to say that is the view that you have from Tender Reflections, and that the folks were happily enjoying watching some activities. So here's again the pictures from the stars. And like we said before, we can kind of talk about different pictures and different views. I think it's important to feel the area. And I think Mark will go and talk a little bit about some of the things and the picture that we have with the poles with the ABS, if we could talk about that, the ABS water tower and kind of what it might look like on there. So I might jump to there. Okay, let's do this. Let's talk about tax increment financing. Just a little bit to talk about what it is, why are we doing it? Very briefly, wanted to point out that it's not restricted to areas of rural development or blight. I know that's a word that's used quite a bit. In fact, the highest percentage of currently active tax incremental districts in Wisconsin are defined as mixed use, such as TID 5. And the principle behind the creation is in the past, if a municipality wanted to expand its local tax base, it had to burden the cost on its own, and the other taxing jurisdictions would benefit from the growth. So seeing as lots of legislatures in the United States said that this situation's unfair, let's use TIF as a way to remedy the problem and share among governmental entities. So this goes into then my favorite slide, and I'll be quick. Municipality creates a TID. The taxing jurisdictions agree to support this operation from the existing tax base within the TID. So the taxing entities agree that the municipality will use those taxes on the value increase in the TID to pay for those projects and other development costs, so that when the TID closes, there will be more tax revenue to share with the entities. And that is what this is designed to say is, here you've got the TID created, you've got a TID base value, you've got all these jurisdictions here that are affected. The idea is that this value increment of the active TID goes up so that when the TID is terminated, they're sharing. And as you know, from our process, we have a joint review board and all of these taxing jurisdictions are represented. When there is a TID amendment, as we just went through, as there is a project plan, they are in the discussion on that and agree to those things. So why is it even offered for this project? Why is it proposed? So again, the challenges of commercial development in that area, great visibility, lack of direct access. The direct and indirect economic impact is something I don't want to just highlight it on the value and the revenue that's going to come in, but I want to talk about the acceleration for other types of development that really would be wanted in DeForest. And I think that's restaurant, other things that are going on like that. It's an amenity for residents. We've certainly seen that some residents are in favor of this. And it's a draw for visitors that we want to make sure and keep visitors coming to DeForest. That's part of our comprehensive plan. That's part of our economic development plan. Certainly, if that's not something we want to do, we need to revise a lot of plans. But really, wanting to bring one of the things that we highlight in DeForest, and several residents highlighted it this evening, are the parks and trails. And the trails that we want to invite people to enjoy, and that's one of the reasons people come to DeForest. So that's part of our DNA. So just going over the highlights of the proposed development agreement that's in front of us tonight. So as part of the project, and I just highlighted the important parts, we talked about traffic. So we're going to talk about some of the traffic flows and what would be done, the KL engineering study that's in as an exhibit to the development agreement, that of what changes would need to be made, and the developer has agreed to make those changes in this agreement. So the development of the project shall result in an increase of taxable assessed value to the property of not less than $9,800,000. And this is what the TIDs were created for, is to increase the value in the TID and so that it could be closed then later and create more revenue. So that is what the purpose of the TID is. And that's why this is valid in this area. This is the KL engineering study that you've seen, and the different 3 things that they say they need to do, and kind of the traffic generation, not to breeze over this because it's important, as a tax generation information that has been studied for years, and how this development would impact compared to other developments that have been proposed for this area. And it was certainly seen in this KL engineering study that it would be less, and that there would be more traffic from other types of development that were previously seen for this area. Okay, so the development loan, this is the village would provide a development loan to the developer in the amount of $200,000. The loan is upon issuance of an occupancy permit. That means that the building has to be finished before they get any funding. So the loan is what you could call a forgivable loan if they're able to meet other tenets of the agreement, that will be a forgivable loan. But that is what some people have said is upfront, but it is actually meaning that it's upfront of the increment that goes to the TID is realized. But the occupancy of the building has to be created and built. Okay, the total amount to be paid to the developer under the municipal revenue obligation shall be the lesser of the available tax increment, or $900,000. So that is the lesser of those 2 things as used in the agreement. So that is what we're looking at, is we're looking at $1.1 million. And this is going to be, it's revenue realized, and you can see here the schedule. It's revenue realized over the year. So it's not handing over that much funding at the beginning or at a certain period of time. They have to meet those tenets of the agreement to get the funding in return. So that's something that is certainly on top of mind when we create these agreements, that there is an ability to make sure that things are realized before any funding is spent. So I will continue just to say that the village quickly has the option to purchase for $1 this area right here. And I'm sorry, this is so small, but you've seen it. It's the tip of this where there's the road that's going through, and that is for access, so that they will create access to, and if I had GIS up, it would be good, but I don't, so I'm going to continue, that it would go up north through there. So that's seeing as access to that area. So that's important tenet of the agreement. And then highlights of the proposed agreement, finally, thanks for your patience, everyone, is that this is with Ryan Rangat and not with Bill Rangat. So he is the one to sign on there, and he is the responsible party. And so after that, I think what I'm going to do is just turn it over to Mark to see if he has a few comments. And then I think we want to address certainly Mr. Larson's photo. I think it's right here. And I appreciate this. Wanting to make sure that we really understand what's going to be seen and what's going to be what the site's going to be like. So we kind of took a look at where this is coming from and what will be seen. And so I have a little diagram here just at the very end I want to show. And Mark, if you don't mind going through this. If I can get it up here. Sorry.
Good evening, everyone. So one of the key impacts of this proposal potentially is the visual impact. And that's been mentioned, many times in different forums. And that's something we have evaluated, and we take the information that we receive and try to parse through it a little bit. And that photo that you saw is, interesting and seemingly very impactful, isn't it? We wanted to make sure that you understood where we think that photo is actually pointing. The location of the photo, we believe, was taken roughly from the intersection on the right, I think Autumn Blaze and Larkspur, if I recall correctly, are the intersecting streets there. And if you remember the photo, and we can go back to it, on the right-hand side is the ABS water tower. And on the left-hand side are the two blue grain silos for that location. So if you were to point a camera, I think it follows the yellow line, because if we go back to the map, the white tower, difficult to see at this scale, is right there just below the green line. And the blue silos are further south, just to the north of the main white structure, right in that location. So the view that I think you're seeing from that location is actually several hundred feet south of where the nets will actually be. So the nets are not being proposed in that area. And in fact, I think the intent of siting the facility where it's sited is to minimize the visual impact, because the actual direction that one would be looking at to see the nets, if possible, would be over the top of, first of all, future houses within Rivers Turn 3rd Edition, and trees and other things that would be planted in those yards, plus the existing ABS buildings, plus some topography which falls away as you get to the interstate. So in addition to the netting, I'm not sure what scale that was at. It's just not the right direction, in my opinion, based on where the photo was taken and what you see in the photo. I can continue on, I suppose, and I do not want to talk about things that I've talked about before, and I'll try not to and be available for questions instead. I did want to respond to a couple of the comments. That was one of them. The visual impact of the lights and the nets. And I can say, and this was in my report to P&Z, from different vantage points, you will be able to see the lights and the nets from offsite. From the new mixed-use building on the corner of Innovation Drive and what will be River Road, you will be able to see those features. I do not believe you'll be able to see them from many of the most of the single family residences in Conservancy Place. We talked about the other impacts that were discussed are noise. I talked about that quite a bit last week. I won't talk about it again. I don't believe, except to say I don't believe there will be noise impacts within the single family residential neighborhood of Conservancy Place. The other impacts that were discussed tonight include traffic. We've talked a little bit about traffic in the past, but it was raised a few different times. We did, as was mentioned, hire and continue to utilize KL Engineering to analyze traffic, and including up to today. And they're doing traffic analysis, not just for this proposal, but for all the other potential developments that are to occur along River Road. And aside from the environmental corridor, the wetlands, the floodplain, the stream corridor, that the village has planned for as last 15 years, last 20 years has been that all those cornfields are going to eventually be developed land. So they put that information into the model, and probably not surprisingly to members of the board, it suggested that if all of those lands do develop, we're going to need a 4-lane River Road all the way from County V down to Windsor Road. And there's a plan, and a progressive plan in place to make that happen. It's already happened on the north end, and I saw the construction vehicles parked and ready to go in Conservancy Place to realign River Road as I came here tonight. The traffic analysis considered all that in addition to the impact that in-seekers would have. And as part of that, suggested that, in advance of getting to the 4-laning of a River Road right at the entrance, that pin seekers ought to be responsible for making sure left turns get in and out of that facility safely. So that is part of the recommendation going forward. There was concern and is concern about cut-through traffic, especially on Innovation Drive. A legitimate concern. Clearly, with the bridge, there is more traffic on Innovation Drive than there was before. And clearly, with additional development along River Road, there will be more traffic on Innovation Drive than before. The opinions of the traffic engineers is that in order to get from, say the Pin Seekers area to the South Main Street businesses where Pick and Save are, et cetera, or to get to Highway 51, that won't be the preferred route. Someone would have to make a decision to take a longer route to get there because there is no direct connection of Innovation Drive to 51. You have to take at least 2 or 3 turns to get to the interchange at Windsor Road. So it is certainly predicted that there will be more traffic on Innovation Drive, but in general, it's not suggested that that would be the predominant traffic movement route. The final thing I'll mention is the environmental impacts, and did we study them? We certainly studied impacts on wetlands and other features in the area, and in fact, the village has one of the strongest ordinances in the state designed to protect those environmental features. It's required that in this particular area, I don't know if it's 90 or 100% of stormwater be retained on site before it leaves the site. There is a lot of detail left to go in the planning for that and for other environmental considerations. And I think the public process has been helpful in bringing other public concerns to light. The impacts on birds caused us to study that issue. We know we need to think about that and mitigate that should this project go forward beyond this stage into the detailed planning that would follow. So everyone, I think, knows in the room, if this vote succeeds tonight, you won't see trucks out there tomorrow. There's a lot of steps that need to happen. There'll be another visit to the Planning and Zoning Commission with detailed plans to address all the issues we discussed tonight. And I think including adding to those the issues that have been raised by the public over the last few weeks. So thank you, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Yeah, Mark, can you help with the development process? And if the board should say no to a TIF agreement, does that stop development?
It would be, for this particular development, it would be then up to the builder to decide whether they could move forward with the project without that support. If they decided not to, that doesn't stop other people from proposing development on the same site. The range of uses that are permitted by right and that would not require this much process include light industrial uses, office uses, variety of commercial uses, including restaurants. Basically anything that would be indoors would be permitted by right, within this neighborhood and within this area that we're talking about tonight. So I mentioned this before. There will be development along River Road in this corridor. It is certainly your choice to decide, whether to approve or not TIF support, and when a conditional use permit is brought forward, whether that meets the standards and should be approved or not.
Bill?
Yeah, I'll go off that since that was my first question for the first speaker. We recently approved a plumbing business down by Bell Labs. These people make good money. A master plumber is well over 6 figures. Journeyman with overtime is 6 figures. Helpers, apprentices. I don't think any of these people here would object to a business of that kind in that cornfield. I seriously doubt. I don't think they know about that business. It's a plumbing business with a showroom. It doesn't have 160-foot nets. That picture, it isn't accurate. It was just a description, a depiction, I should say, of what 160-foot poles would look like. Of course, it's not the right angle. Let's take a look at something that wasn't presented to us, the view at the end of Blue Stem that hasn't been developed yet, which would be even more in line with that. That wasn't presented to us. It took a resident to make that up on their own. And the water towers are going to be there. The water tower can't be hooked in our system. So that's going to go. The blue harvesters are going to be gone. They're worthless. So the barns are going to be gone. Yeah, there'll be houses there. I mean, ABS isn't always going to be there. Comparing Vitens to this is a stretch. It's like apples and grapes. Vitens is 1 level. This is 3. This has got the music on top. Vitens does not have outdoor amplified music. This acoustic music, that connotates a piano bar to me. It's going to be an attraction on Friday and Saturday nights with music. We all know that. And on different nights, like a night like tonight, with high humidity, low ceiling cover, the sound is going to travel different from a day like yesterday. Bright sky, clear. And your thing in one of the deals, you went to Vitens at 10:30 in the morning and listened to the sound. Well, I would have liked to have seen it from 10 o'clock at night on a Friday or Saturday night, just for comparison. I mean, we got to be fair on this, on comparison, whether it's where the poles are in that guy's picture or whatever. I went down to Schaumburg, Illinois, looked at the poles from a 1/4 mile away, a 1/2 mile away, a mile away. and it's ugly. I wouldn't want that in my backyard. I wouldn't want that in these people's backyards. I mean, come on, I mean, it's that picture. It wasn't a full representation, but it was pretty close. It's to give it some scale, and it's pretty close. The water tower is closer to that person's house, but when you're actually looking at stuff, it puts it into perspective.
Thank you, Bill.
I'm not done.
If you have a question,
Yeah, oh yeah, I got a whole bunch of questions. Number 3 of the developers agreement talks about job creation and the guarantee after a year, 2 years, we're gonna have so many jobs. Who's gonna do that? Are we gonna audit that?
Yes.
Okay, we can't even get the potholes filled in the parking lot at the post office, and we're gonna. Developer experience? How many years of developer experience does the developer have in a project like this?
So that is, when we write these agreements, if you're asking me a question.
Yeah, that's a
Okay,
question.
sure.
How many years of developer
Sure.
experience does a person with their name on have?
When we're writing these agreements, the focus on what is the risk to the village. We cannot guarantee, I'm going to answer your question. We cannot guarantee anybody's little potato company, and I just use them as an example just because they're a business that's here. We can't guarantee their success.
Right.
And I can't guarantee, and neither can the landowner. So what we do is we develop these agreements so that the village has very minimal risk. So that there's no funding until the building is built. So that's what my focus is on. I can't guarantee the success of a business. So that's what I would say there.
Yeah, and Joe Ring said that last week too. Other things in pamphlets have called about the pandemic and the lack of demand for office space. There's been a lack of sales of office space out there for 18 years.
Sure.
And now all of a sudden everything's getting blamed on pandemics. You know,
Oh, I wouldn't think it was the pandemic. I think the pandemic accelerated something that was already happening.
oh, sure, but to say the pandemic, I firmly believe business space won't come back like it would. Business travel, hotels. We want to put out a hotel out there too, right?
Well, that's in the vision, but there's nothing proposed at this time.
Yeah. But we need people to go out there and stay at the hotel during the day, business travel during the week. Not so much a question, but do we want a star in DeForest or a scar? Thank you.
all right. Other questions for Mark or Michelle? Abby?
Question for Mark. Just wondering if you could go into a little bit more detail about, you said, you know, if it were to be approved tonight, that there would be planning to mitigate the impact to birds. And I was wondering, is that mostly with the P and Z committee? And if so, which, I guess, which items would come up on their agenda that would be discussed?
The next step in the zoning process would be for the applicant to seek a final development plan approval. And at that point in time, we would have all the details on the type of netting that is being proposed, and the impact on, you know, wildlife of that netting, and then also opportunities to explore potential steps to mitigate, you know, concerns about birds and wildlife and getting entangled in the nets or injured by the nets. So that would be the time when we would be able to make that happen.
Thank you. I guess a follow-up question is, would the Planning and Zoning Committee be able to put, I guess, extra requirements on, or is it more of the developer would, through discussions, choose on their own to, do certain mitigation strategies?
I think we have some ability through the final development plan approval process to impose requirements that are related to information that's included in village ordinances. I didn't study that particular issue in depth. I would hope that we would get, and the signals I've got is that we'll get some research and a proposal that is going to be respectful and responsive to that up front. Then it'll be our job to review it. There is not a specific requirement in the ordinance that says thou shalt not build nets that harm birds. So we will have to be vigilant about that.
Other questions? Abby?
I guess I do have another one. I think this question is for Steve, I think, or whoever wants to step forward and answer this. I'm thinking of a slide that came up, or maybe Mark, a slide that came up in Mark's presentation that he thought he was off the hook, sorry. That came up in Mark's presentation about the comprehensive plan, and Brandy was very kind enough to send it to me this afternoon because I was thinking about it, but I didn't have the visual reference to remind myself. And it talked about levels of discretion. And I didn't see on there where, the village approving TIF incentives, where that comes in. So would you say that's a high level of discretion for the village board where case by case basis, we can say yes or no, or is it more prescriptive than that?
The board can decide when to use TIF in each and every situation.
Okay. Are we done with questions? Jim?
I have a number of comments, but I do think that this one is a bit of a question, or can be. So I remember, this is, I'll say more rumor, but that there's been businesses in the past, and I'm thinking very distant past, because if for the River Corridor Trail or the Upper Yahara Trail was even here. And what I had heard about that time, that there's businesses that were looking at DeForest as a possible location. And one of the questions that the business asked was, what can the village provide for the business? And I guess through my planning and zoning time, I've always sort of taken that to heart. As far as like the Yahara River corridor and different parks and things, we've been developing those as a community for the enticement of business. And I guess what I'm asking as a question, do you feel that is true? Is that maybe something that's happened in the past, or what do businesses look for when they cite their dollars for commercial development?
I think it's certainly true that they do, that businesses do look for a place because, and especially now, they look for a place where people want to be. So if they are able to attract people, meaning workers, that is extremely helpful to them, to have parks, trails, things like that, that are going to attract people. It's very important, and probably increasingly important, I would say. Does that answer your question?
I believe so.
Do you have other questions and comments, Jim?
Comments, that's the only question.
You want to call the question? Oh, okay. All right, any other questions or discussion? If not,
One last question.
Rebecca?
I don't care who answers it. Maybe a controversial question. Why should we ignore the residents?
Do you want me to answer that? I guess I should ask my superior if I should answer that question. I was going to say, It is certainly never a matter of ignoring. It is presenting the information that we've done our due diligence on. And it's really up to you to decide whether that due diligence is satisfactory or not.
Thank you. Jim?
So I'm going to go through a number of things. We talked about birds tonight, and it's something that I am cognizant of. It's definitely something that I heard about. What I take comfort in is that I know my brother is an architect, and there's different buildings that have been constructed that do get bird strikes. And what I've witnessed through his business is that there's a ways to put glass that has fibers in them so that to minimize the bird strikes or the birds actually see the windows. I know there's a future opportunity when they come to the planning and zoning to discuss this in detail and hopefully mitigate the issues with birds, the migratory birds. There's concern lifted up by a couple of people about water quality and our wetlands. Mark already mentioned it tonight. I would say about 10 years ago, we went through a very in-depth process of looking at our stormwater management. And like was mentioned, I would say us in Middleton are the most aggressive with our stormwater ordinances in Dane County. Dane County is one of the most aggressive in Wisconsin, and Wisconsin is one of the most aggressive in the nation. So I was part of that discussion back then. I've been on the Friends of the Yahara River headwaters for 10 years now, and I take the stormwater very much to heart. I know we are covered with stormwater in our protection of wetlands. A question was asked, who am I voting for if I would happen to vote for this proposal? And I've been thinking about that. I've been thinking about that for days. It is very hard. So I should just be straight up front. I will be voting positive for the TIF funding. And knowing that, I've got friends that live in Conservancy. I used to live in Conservancy. I wish I still lived there, but that's not my life situation. But it's been mentioned, would I vote for it if I lived there? Yes, I would. If it was a quarter mile from my house currently, yes, I would. Who I'm voting it for, and that's where I think of my time on the planning and zoning. I've been on here for 17 years now. And I think about what DeForest was 17 years ago. I suspect we're about half the size we are today, or maybe even less. And we've continued to grow. I think that's a positive thing. I think that's what's brought a lot of people to Conservancy Place and DeForest is the growth. And I think well-planned growth that we've had. So I look who I might be voting for, or is the best comment I can have is for the future residents and continued growth. And I think of a comment that's been made just relatively recently. There has been a study done of DeForest and many other communities. And Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, but that study found that DeForest or the DeForest and Windsor area was the largest increase in property values. Is that correct?
Yeah, Steve knows that better than I do, but on a percentage basis, DeForest over the last several years, it's been the highest in Dane County.
Yeah. So I think we've been doing something very special and very good for all the residents of DeForest. And I like to think that my vote is continuing that. There's obviously a difference of opinion. And that's a risk that I'm willing to take. I suspect I will be changing friendships because of this. That's not necessarily something I signed up to do, but it's something that I'm willing to do for what I think of as the betterment of our community. As far as the TIF funding, looking at the funding package, I just don't see it as any risk for the DeForest residents. I don't see why you would not, just because it is so secure. The staff has really done their due diligence on this. I was not in favor of the multifamily that was placed near this. Again, I am, so I do look at I just want to mention that I look at every proposal on its own basis, and I'm not, so you can talk about that, the risk that I won't be reelected. That's, I'll say, fine with me. 19 years will be enough of public service if that's what it is. But I hope that when you consider it, this is one item. There's a lot of items that we see, and we're trying to do what's best for DeForest. We do have difference of opinion, and just know that I'm listening, but I do have a difference of opinion with many of you in the room tonight. And I thank you. I do want to see one other item is the traffic. I am very concerned about that also. I am aware of what Mark mentioned. There was a 4-lane plan for DeForest or for River Road back in 2002. And I am personally very concerned, and I don't know the history because I wasn't on the village board, why that isn't done or we aren't further along with that plan. That's really one of the reasons why I wanted to be on the village board, is to try to understand the budget better. Because there's improvements like that that I wanted to see done. So that's something that I will work through with the village through the budgeting process and try to understand that better. So just know that I'll be working to continue to make this proposal better. I hear the impacts that you're concerned about. I'll work on it with planning and zoning and what I can through the budget process. So thank you.
Thank you. Colleen, then Tashidra and Bill.
Thank you, Jim. That was very eloquent and very heartfelt, and you said a lot of things that I would probably not say as well. Re-election is not an issue for me. You don't want to re-elect me, that's fine. I too am voting as I always do. It's not, as someone mentioned earlier, it's not about me. And that's something, a thought that goes through my head with the athletic complex. I was new on the board back when that was getting close to being voted on and finished. I wasn't sure if I was in favor of it or not, but the bigger question was, is it to the benefit of the village? Yes, it was. Give it a chance. Voted yes. I'm going to do the same thing tonight. I too am in favor of this for a lot of the reasons Jim has already covered. To say that I ignored any citizens' concerns is not true. This has been one of the most difficult decisions. This has been taxing physically and mentally for the last couple of weeks. So believe me when I tell you I take this very seriously. And that's all I want you to know is I'm not ignoring your concerns. It's not about what I want. It's about the betterment of the village. And it's been given a lot of thought.
Thank you, Colleen. Tashidra?
First of all, I want to thank everyone that is in this room tonight and online. And normally I am very eloquent in my speech. However, I reserve the right to be a bit emotional tonight because my heart aches for the village of DeForest. and it aches for our children who are watching us right now and are taking note of our behavior towards one another. And I want you to know that I don't lose sleep. I sleep very well. I lose sleep when my family is aching. And I can tell you, I lost more sleep last night than I have in my 42 years of living. And that includes losing my dear brother. And I lost sleep because there have been friendships that have been challenged, relationships that have been destroyed, accusations that have hurt. And that trauma will last no matter what the vote is tonight, for or against. The relational trauma and the behavioral trauma that we have displayed to one another as a community, as adults, will echo in this community for days and months and years to come. And as a matter of fact, when we look at any new development right now, what we've been through over the last 2 weeks will resonate in our very souls because we will be reminded. And with that, I will address 3 different entities. One, I will address the builder. You have, no matter what the vote is tonight, become an integral part of the Village of DeForest's history. You have been a part of sparking hearts, minds, emotions, and passions. And I pray you take that very serious with whatever you choose to do in your future. That what you do and what you choose has impacted hearts and minds, not just with the people that are in this community, but with the babies that are gonna come and are gonna hear the discussions that are being had in the grocery store, in the library, in the park, where we are supposed to be fostering love, harmony, and humility. We haven't. We have been sparking rage and discourse and dissension, and that is not the Village of DeForest. That is not the Village of DeForest that I have known since 2007. I want you to realize that no matter what happens, your essence is here permanently. And I hope you do not take that lightly. I pray that the lessons you have learned with going after your own vision and dream and passions impact other people's visions, dreams, and passions. And I hope that at night you reflect on that you have an opportunity to do good, whether it's in DeForest or in area communities. With that, I address my beloved staff. My heart aches for you. My heart aches because you were hired to do a job and you received direction from your board. We are here to protect you and honor the work that we give you charge to do. I was not here when the board said, yes, seek this out. See how you can make it great for Village of DeForest and our residents. I was not here. I was not here when you were given thumbs up. I don't approve of thumbs up. I approve of yes and no, so that we can honor our yes and our no, because sometimes we forget our thumbs and we don't honor our thumbs. And my staff, you were my staff before I became a village trustee. When I come in to pay my property tax, I look at each one of those women that are in that office and I greet them because they are my family. And my heart aches with how you guys have been beat down for doing the job we've charged you to do with passion, consistency, and due diligence. And I want you to know that I am here to advocate and stand by what I ask you to do and not get in your way and take the information that you have given. Thank you, Mark, for taking my call. Thank you, Al, for taking my call. Thank you, Steve, for taking my call. Thank you, Michelle, for taking my call. Thank you, Brandy, for being there when I come into the village, not looking my best. Thank you, because I can't do my job if I don't trust you to do your job. And I will advocate and protect the staff because they are the messengers. And they only do, let's be real here. They only do what they're directed to do. And when they bring things to the board that we like or do not like, they have to listen to our vote. So thank you for your diligence and your commitment whether it costs you your relationships, your time, and your peace. We have lost a lot of peace in this village, and that is not okay. Last, I address the community. And when I say the community, I say the village of DeForest, from the north to the south to the east and the west, and all the crazy lines in between. There's a litmus test that I use: good, better, and best, because I never desire to do evil or bad or harm. What is good for me? What is better for my neighborhood? But what is best for my village? That's the only litmus test I use. I have never been a follower, but I have always used my moral compass, which is integrity, honesty, humility, seasoned with some grace. And I pray we start giving each other a little bit of grace. What I know about the community, the village of DeForest, is one, we all love DeForest or we wouldn't live here. Two, we all have a common purpose, which is to see DeForest thrive. Let's hold on to that vision and purpose together. No, we will not always get along and we will not always see eye to eye, but the one thing that we can always do no matter what is honor and respect one another and respect the differences. It is in diversity that you create change and growth and passion. And now I will address Conservancy, the communities within Conservancy. I hear you. I've heard some of you up until 11 o'clock at night when I emailed you back and I shouldn't have. So it was grammatically incorrect and sentence structure was not appropriate, but I needed you to know that I hear you. What I hear is a collective voice that says, we don't like this. I hear that. I hear the hurt. I hear the pain. And I can tell you right now, I know full well what it feels like to not feel heard, to not be listened to, and to have my very own God-given rights trampled. So I would never do that to anyone. So when you refer to the board in its collective entity, thank you. But please understand that there are individuals making up that collection. And don't forget that we're individuals coming together to do what is right for everyone. This is my hope, is that the concerns you have brought forth, and Mark, I appreciate you delineating out the fact that this is not done. This is not done. It is not over. And I don't succumb to the fat lady singing. I think that was a horrible phrase that came out. But let me tell you, it's not done. So with your anger, with your passion, with your rage, I say, thank you. Because you've given everyone more to think about, more to consider. And that is why we have village board meetings. It's so that you can bring forth your ideas, your pains, and your frustrations, respectfully, I hope, so that collectively we can make better choices. And that is what we're going to do. And in closing, I am here because I love DeForest. I keep my family here because I love DeForest. And I will continue, whether I am on this board or not, to be knee-deep and fully immersed in everything DeForest related. And I hope you trust that. No matter how I choose to vote tonight, I want you to know that I did take my challenge from my constituents the other day and go speak to many different people in and outside of Conservancy so that I could hear various voices. And I take their voices and your voices, and I'm putting it together. And the only voice and opinion I haven't listened to is my very own, because it's not about me. So when I vote tonight, to answer the question of the gentleman who has fallen asleep, but I know you can still hear me because even in a coma, you can hear. It's the truth. Be careful what you say when people are sleeping. I vote and represent DeForest, not one single person, but a collection. And I've been into that nursing home that you guys spoke about. I've taken care of the residents there. Actually, I've been in every nursing home and long-term care facility in DeForest. And I walk through that door with pride because those are my community members. And when they get nursing care, they get the best care ever. And I have talked to a lot of the owners, and you're right, not all nursing homes are great. I believe people should die at home with their families or heal at home with their families, because that's what they did with Dr. Quinn and the medicine woman, okay? But I've gone into these facilities, and I think it's not fair to judge any entity unless you've been there, worked there, and have a stake there. So I will close by saying, I value and appreciate you all, even more so because you've listened to my rant and my soapbox. But this isn't over. It's only just begun. And thank you for bringing out your voice, because I appreciate it. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. And once again, you were very eloquent and spoke on behalf of lots of us. So thank you. Bill?
I'll make this quick. I just, couple things I didn't get in. I met a guy that lives over in Heritage Gardens over a year ago. He had a village issue and we became friends. And I asked him about this project and he was all excited. Place to go 3-4 times a year. I asked him how he would like that located between here, where he lives in Heritage Gardens and Club 51. I said, there's an open field there. Oh, no. I said, why not? He says he didn't want to look at it. Well, okay. We're not going to beat a dead horse. TIF funding, I'm not against it. In fact, when Hooper came in, I was the first one to say, yes, welcome to this community. How can we help you? Hundreds of good jobs. It is a valuable tool. It helps us grow. I think it's been overused in some spots. Residential for number one. I think the TIF number 5 has kind of been carried by these people's residential taxes. Them wanting to come out here and put down roots, expensive homes, expensive taxes. And we have an obligation for their way of life and my way of life. Well, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Rebecca?
Yeah. I appreciate everything that everybody had to say. I hear everybody that said something, and in many respects, I agree with everything you said. When I first heard of this project, I was kind of excited. I thought, wow, this is really a cool thing. But then I started listening. I started learning more. I started investigating. I started, how is this going to be impacting the community? Would it be something that would be nice for the community? Absolutely. I do believe that's true. But as I've come to learn more about this project and where it's located and how it's going to be impacting the people who are closest to it, I just cannot support it. They are the ones who are going to have to look at it day in and day out. They are the ones who are going to have to worry about their kids on the street with the increased traffic. Yes, I know that's been beat with a dead horse, but it is an issue that is of concern to these people. There is some noise issues that are for these folks that they are going to have to deal with day in and day out. I've heard somebody say, oh, you'll get used to it. Why should they have to? If I was going to have that in my backyard, I would move. That's my own personal opinion. I think it is much better suited in an area that is not directly next door to a neighborhood. That is my personal opinion. And I would love to have this facility here. I just cannot support it where it is located. I think it is sad that the people have felt as unheard as they feel they have been unheard. I'm very disturbed by some comments that were made throughout all this process. I'm very sad that certain people chose to say negative things about people and then refused to apologize about that. But at the same time, yes, some folks from the community did some of the same things. It was a give and take on that. But we need to be listening to these folks. They're the ones who are going to be impacted. And that needs to be heavily taken into consideration in the whole mix of things. So.
Thank you. Abby?
Okay, well, I'm going to say ditto to some of the trustees that talked about how this decision has been weighing on them. I agree 100%. I've certainly not slept well, or it's been hard. But that's fine. That's how it is sometimes on the village board. And I really appreciate and respect and empathize with, some of the heartfelt things I heard from trustees tonight, whether I vote the same as you or not, and also from residents as well. And I apologize if I hope this comes out very coherent. I'm following through on my promise that I wasn't going to decide how I would vote until it's time to vote. So I didn't have, a prepared statement. I just tried to jot notes tonight as I heard things. So first thing I want to point out is I've heard a lot of concerns about if we've been listening to you. And I have to give a lot of respect to the board and village staff, particularly Luann, that look what's going on right now. We have a room filled up with people. We have Zoom. We haven't had that before, and COVID kind of pushed that forward as a necessity, that people can participate and watch even when they're not here. And that involved a lot of time and energy and funding for that. So I really appreciate that. And I also appreciate elected officials listening to their constituents, because I've certainly experienced, just in my personal capacity as a citizen, times that I've reached out to my elected officials and they weren't listening on certain issues that were really impactful to my family. Times where they wouldn't even return phone calls or emails. And so I point out tonight that I'm sorry if you don't feel like, you've been listened to, but I've been amazed by everyone up front here the last few weeks, really listening and really digesting the information and responding to emails and phone calls. And then I would also, just a minor thing that I wanted to point out, when we have under the agenda action resulting from closed session and the resolution put there, and I know a resident said they disagreed with that agenda, and I just want to point out with how our agendas work is that if it's on there, it's not necessarily saying it's a done deal. It's saying that this is what we're going to talk about and what we potentially might make a decision on, so that the public is informed and can decide if they want to come, if they want to speak on that issue. And it's an important part of open meetings, state requirements, but also how we want to conduct ourselves with integrity. So the opposite would be the worst case scenario if we didn't have that on there. So moving on, I've also had concerns through this process about respect. I've heard unfounded accusations made, insinuations, raised voices, which has been really, really sad to me. sometimes even from a trustee here, which is concerning to me. And I would say, I would, I guess, kind of agree with what trustee Allen has said about, it's really, really hurt my heart, certain insinuations or accusations being made about our staff. As she said, they act on our direction. I know someone also said, you know, to me and trustee Allen in particular, that you don't need to be afraid. And I've never been afraid on the village board. I've never felt intimidated or pressure from anyone that I should vote a certain way. And I must just point out that I appreciate our village president. I appreciate staff and consultants that have been very respectful, and I've always felt freely to decide how I thought was best for community, which might not be the same as other trustees, and that's fine. We're different people. So that said, in this case, I recognize the residents' concerns and have some similar concerns. I basically listed out a pros and cons sheet to help me kind of digest through this. And I guess I came out a little bit heavier on the con side. This does not mean that I will vote, you know, if there's future projects in this neighborhood or in this TID, it does not guarantee that I will vote exactly as residents in this neighborhood would like. I will always weigh each individual project based on the greater needs of the community. That's what ultimately trumps all. And I've made clear in the past that sometimes it will go along with what residents in a particular neighborhood want, and it might not necessarily. And I also want to say with my vote no on this is I really respect and appreciate staff and all the time that they've put into it. I really do. So this isn't a judgment on anything that you've done or any information you've provided. You've been very open, very available, and I very much appreciate it. And this has been a very a pressure cooker situation. Probably, I can only think of one other time on my time on the village board that's been a pressure cooker like this. And I think this one's a lot different. And yeah. So I would say I'm not opposed to this project. If I look at this as just a human being, as an individual, I'm pretty neutral. But I guess with my pros and cons sheet, I have concerns with the location and you know, putting TIF money towards it. I would have liked to see a neighborhood meeting earlier on to address concerns and kind of have back and forth between the neighborhood and the developer. I saw the CF Investments developer do that, and I thought that was really effective. I know people might not have agreed with how I voted on that or agreed with that project, but I thought that process was very well done and did address some concerns. Maybe not all of them, but a lot of them. And also, since this is kind of more of a luxury, not necessarily a need, I would like for this project to go forward with TIF funding, I would like it to find a happy medium between, the needs or wants of the neighborhood, right, directly adjacent, and the community. So those are some of the major concerns that popped up, and I appreciate the developer coming forward with this as well. He's definitely provided a lot of time to us, and I appreciate that.
Thank you, Abby. Jim.
Thank you. I want to again reemphasize Abby and Shedra's comments. I neglected to thank staff. I have maybe been around too long because I've taken you guys for granted, but you do an excellent job, and I want you to know that I support you in everything that you do. And like other people said, I have listened. It has been sleepless nights, or as far as a lot of readings to keep up. And I thank you all for your comments. And I think what I'd like to do at this point is to make a motion to approve resolution 2021-067 as written.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying. Want a roll call? All right, we can do a roll call.
Okay. Trustee Witherspoon.
No.
Trustee Allen.
Yes.
Trustee Landgraf.
No.
Trustee Lowry.
No.
Trustee Little.
Yes.
Trustee Simpson.
Yes.
President Cahill Wolfgram.
Yes,
Motion carries 4-3.
thank you. Thank you. With that, I would ask if there's any other business to come before the board tonight. And if not, I would entertain a motion for adjourn.
Can you let her
We
finish?
have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign.